Hi, it's Sam from Train of Thought here. Today we're going to be talking about why it is we spend so much time doing the unimportant work when we're working and how we struggle to do the stuff that really matters. Before you do anything, just make sure to hit that subscribe button so you keep up to date with all the latest videos. If you haven't watched the What is Deep Work video up here, I'd really recommend checking that out and then coming back to this video. I think it'll be all the more valuable. Now, plenty of us spend so much of our time doing things like firing off emails and attending meetings that don't really matter and doing stuff that doesn't really contribute much to our work. It's not particularly valuable and not very important. Why is that? Now, I think in a wider context, it's part of our whole working and living culture. We have a real busyness culture. We're obsessed with doing more stuff. We think that accumulating things and attending events and just filling up our diary with things means that we're getting more out of life. We are addicted to busyness. The difficulty there is that in the workplace, we're there to generate value. The reason we are employed as people, the reason anyone would pay us money is because we do something in return. And by spending so much time doing the stuff that doesn't really matter, we're actually sacrificing our own value. We're depreciating the value we can bring. And that's societally. We're spending loads of time doing stuff that ultimately isn't that important. And it's hurting us and everyone else. So the question here is, how can we go from that? How can we move from that to working more deeply and doing things that are much more valuable to society, to us, that make sure that we are a step ahead and constantly competing to be the best we can be. Now, Cal Newport, in his book, Deep Work, says there are three main reasons why we spend so much time doing shallow work and why we struggle to work with more depth. Now, the first reason is the lack of metrics. We live in the digital age. So many things are measurable. There's a view counter below this video. There's a subscriber counter below this video. There's so many things we can measure. The problem is we can't really measure a lot of the things that make life most worthwhile. We can measure how many notifications we have in a day. We can measure how many emails we get. We cannot measure how much we're loved. We can't measure creative thought. We can't measure strategic thought. We can't measure compassion, but we can measure the WhatsApp messages on our phone. So what do we do to demonstrate our value? We veer towards things that are metric based. And the easiest to count are how many emails we attended in a day, how long we spend in meetings, and how long we've worked. So those are the things we do to try and demonstrate value. But ultimately, those things don't really matter if you haven't done things that are genuinely challenging, interesting, and engaging. If you haven't really changed something, if you've just done these things, how much value have you really demonstrated? So there's a lack of metrics for the good stuff. And it's really important to remember this when we look at the salary we get, and that's a figure, or the price of a house, or the price of our holiday. Just because you can measure those things doesn't mean they're really important to you. Remember that so many of the things that are most important in life, we cannot measure. That's reason one, the lack of metrics. Reason two, it's the path of least resistance. It's the easiest thing to do so often. So when you get into work and you've got to decide what to do with your day, that's quite hard, that's quite difficult, that's challenging, that requires a lot of thought. So we just go into our email inbox and there we are, ta-da, there's a to-do list ready-made for us. It's not prioritized in hierarchy of importance, it's just there, but that's the easiest thing to do. If someone puts a load of meetings into your diary, it's easier to just go than it is to look at every meeting one by one and go, do I really need to be there? Is this actually important? The path of least resistance is ultimately to just go along with these external influences on your time. So we do them, even though they're not that valuable or important. And number three, a phrase I really love. Busyness is used as a proxy for productivity. Busyness is used as a proxy for productivity. My own theory on this is this came out of the financial crisis. When people were making people redundant and jobs were very hard to come by, you kind of had to look for a measure of who to keep and who was most valuable. And I think a lot of firms went for the kind of low-hanging fruit, which was just who was there the longest, who appeared to work the hardest. By the way, I've worked with a bunch of people like this in my time. They're people who are happy to send messages really late at night, first thing in the morning, works their life, and they're happy to put as much time in as possible. But time is not value. That's just busyness. Busyness is a proxy for productivity because busyness is public. Busyness is about looking like you're really achieving stuff, even if you're not necessarily doing anything at all. Busyness has become a proxy for productivity. We look for visible signs that people are contributing because, again, it's the path of least resistance and it's easy to measure. You can see how the three are starting to collide. Doing stuff all the time does not mean what you're doing is productive. It doesn't mean what you're doing is valuable. It just means you're doing stuff. Unless it's valuable, it's worthless. It's just noise. And we all generate enormous amounts of noise. Our obsession with looking like we're occupied and we're busy is actually undermining our ability to create value, to do things that are really valuable. But we can start to see through these three that Cal Newport gives us, we can start to see new ways of operating. We can see that it's going to be really valuable to us to actually work more deeply. But it's also calls us massively into question of what really matters. What is it that really is important in life? What is it that generates value? And I think this is the most inspiring thing about looking at these reasons why we work really shallowly. It forces us to ask some really important questions that I think we have to ask. We're spending so much time doing stuff and we're not sure that stuff's worthwhile. And it's making us really, really stressed and distressed. So let's pause and ask, what is it that I can do that's really important? I hope this provoked some thoughts. I hope this made you ask some questions of yourself and the workplace you work in. I think it's really, really important to raise these questions and start to think about these things. Let me know your thoughts, your experiences down in the comment. Please like and subscribe to the video. We'll have plenty more for you soon, in particular on this topic and theme as well. And until we meet again, take care.